Hey guys, David here, founder of Superthread, and welcome to my devlog. So in this devlog, I want to talk about why Superthread is a fully remote company. Now, before I do that, let me begin by explaining how I started Superthread. So, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I started Superthread by myself, and the idea was to launch the documentation part of the Superthread and perhaps work on the issue tracking part later on down the line. As I started doing that, I decided to do it in two entirely new languages, which I've never done, which is Golang and Vue.js. And I believe these technology choices are definitely the right choices. As I was learning Golang, and by the way, I don't believe in this idea of specializing in only one language, because I think if you know one language, the principles are pretty much the same. I wasn't really kind of fazed by the idea of learning a new language. So I started learning it, and as I was learning it, because I wanted to create decent code, I ensured that all the code had 100% unit and integration test coverage. So not only was I building Superthread, but I was actually having fun learning this new language and writing unit tests. And bizarrely enough, I never actually did 100% unit and integration test coverage before. And this time, because I was doing it 100% coverage, I found that it made me faster, because each time I actually changed something, it helped me with the confidence that when I actually made a change, I knew that everything else worked, because the tests would run and the tests would pass or fail. And very often I would make a change and the tests would fail, and that was really so cool, to kind of be working in that way. I don't believe in this idea of having just 50% unit test coverage. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's cool to have any unit test coverage, but I think if you're doing it, you may as well do 100%. I was doing it in Golang, but I wasn't really focusing on Vue.js. And Vue.js is quite a simple framework. It's one of the three big ones, which is basically React, Angular, and Vue.js is the third one. And it's really nice, so I got something going very quickly and it kind of worked. But then by just chance, I found this guy on the internet on one of these freelancing websites, and he was looking for some extra work. He had a full-time job and he was willing to help me. So he took my project, my front-end project, he was a Vue.js expert, and made it amazing, professionalized it to absolutely no end. So I was very impressed by him, and obviously he was living and breathing Vue.js, which was very nice to work with someone like that. And suddenly that gave me the confidence to actually do the issue tracking part. So we ended up creating a prototype which was both issue tracker and the documentation software tightly integrated together. That was really cool, but the idea was that I was going to do the documentation part entirely by myself. So initially I was thinking of, well, hang on, I could be a fully remote company. I can work from home. But then after I met this guy, then I thought, well, let's actually create a proper company. And normally what I would have done is open an office in London, which is where my previous company was. I normally would have opened an office in Shoreditch, which is a tech area in London, which is this wonderful part of London. I mean, the whole of London is wonderful, by the way. It's probably like one of the nicest big cities in the world. It's just a very, very nice, beautiful city. But Shoreditch is really, really cool. It's a tech area, it's got fantastic pubs, many different types of beers, and the cuisine is just wonderful. That was the idea. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to work towards opening an office in London. But then the pandemic struck. There was no option of going to London. And then I kind of considered going fully remote. And it turns out that this isn't such an entirely strange idea. There are a few really big companies, such as WordPress, GitLab, and Todoist, which are really successful companies, which were fully remote to begin with. So once I decided to go fully remote, and because I found it working in my house slightly distracting, I decided to invest in building an office, a garden office. And in England, at least, this is a pretty common thing. So I had a shed, which was an existing shed. It was one of these kind of temporary flaky sheds, and it was leaking as well. So it was about time to be replaced. And so I got somebody to actually build a proper, well-insulated office instead of my shed. And that's working out really, really well. So, I mean, that investment paid dividends, definitely. So once I started working from home, I began to realize the benefits of working from home. So you begin to appreciate the things that really matter in life, such as nature, cooking good food, going for exercise. And also sometimes you're surprised by lovely, delightful things such as snow in England, which rarely happens. So then I kind of thought, okay, I think that working from home, you are more productive than working from an office, especially as a programmer or as a designer, because if you're doing programming, this sort of activity requires deep work. And deep work is just the ability to focus without any distractions. And when you're in an office, it's way harder because, you're working in an open plan office normally, at least that's the way we do it here in England. And, there are many distractions everywhere. I realized that actually working from home makes you more productive. So I think if you're working from an office, you are maybe 50% productive. If you're working from home, I think you are 100% productive. Now, if you're working from home with a pandemic, and if you have a family, let's say with kids like I do, I think you are 70% productive. And the reason why you are 70 and not 100% productive is because I had an office in my house. It was one of the rooms. And just the idea that somebody could make some noise when you're doing deep work is enough to actually offset you and distract you from being able to focus. So that's why I say, if you are working in an office inside of the house and if you have people living with you, I think you're 70% productive, but you're still more productive than working from an office. And then I realized that if you organize this fully remote idea properly, where everybody has to be individually on the camera when you're having your meetings, if you have regular stand-ups, demo days, it turns out that this idea can actually really work. So I decided there and then to actually start a company, which is basically a fully remote company. And there's also a disadvantage of not being a fully remote company in a place like London or San Francisco, because it's extremely difficult to find talent in London or San Francisco especially, because the competition is extremely high. But with this idea of people embracing fully remote, it turns out that there's a lot of talent all over the world, and there's a lot of programmers out there who are able to speak English well and communicate well and actually are very, very good programmers. Just that for some reason they want to stay where they live because it makes sense, their family is there. So in that sense, I think fully remote is quite good and stops the brain drain, and I think also it cuts down on the carbon footprint because we used to commute just hell of a lot. So I think there are many advantages to being fully remote. I also look forward to the pandemic finishing because I think it'd be really cool to kind of meet up at least once a week. So this idea of fully remote works for us, and if you think that you'd like to work for a company like Superthread, please ping me on LinkedIn or just email me your CV. Just go to superthread.com. We're also currently looking for early access subscribers. We are hoping to launch our early access version of Superthread soon. Thank you for watching this video, guys, and we'll see you in our next video.